Should the breeze topic number 6. Let's talk Patois. This came with a link, of course. Link goes to YouTube. We'll watch the video. It's a short video.
Does not have an official name. They others have called it Jamaican Creole. This is an accurate term, but it does not seem to be much used in Jamaica today. Technically, the term Creole refers to a mixed African European language, but because the term was also used to refer to Europeans born in the West Indies, it seems rather inappropriate as the name for the language of the Africans of Jamaica. The French term patois, though widely used in Jamaica today, is not a proper name of this language either. It is a common noun which can refer to any language in the world which is considered a broken or degraded version of a proper language. What we are really confronting in Jamaica is simply a process of hybridization. It is a gross calumny to assume that the result of this interbreeding is an inferior form of English. People resort to hybrids when attempting to produce superior strains of plants or animals. The English language itself was born of a similar crossbreeding between the languages of various conquering and conquered peoples. We must at all times bear in mind that this Afro-Jamaican patois may have spawned positive improvements to the English language. Afro-Jamaican English? How about Afro-Jam? Some might object to this name because the patois is also spoken by the other non-African ethnic groups, such as the East Indians, the Chinese, and even the German Jamaicans. Although the East Indians, Spanish, and Arawaks have contributed a few items of vocabulary, all serious studies of this language agree that the vast majority of the non-English vocabulary is African, as is the phonology, the sound system, and much of the grammar. The African element in the Jamaican population is in the overwhelming majority, probably in the region of 90 to 95%. The fact that all races have adopted the Afro-Jamaican speech does not make it any less African.
Interesting there. Interesting. Let's talk patois. So let me start with an African. Tanzan, what say you?
Um, I didn't know that before. I mean, I think that I thought that Patois and Creole, the best attempts to make English, to make English make sense out of a sense of cultural. Sorry, I have a cricket. Cultural alienation. But I also know that there's a lot of creativity also in the way that language is created. So I don't take it for granted that there was some, Africanisms that were also transplanted with the movement of people. And it's good to hear that there's still Africanism in Patois. I don't understand it very well, but it sounds very melodic and very nice. So yeah, let's speak it. And I also hear that it's pretty interchangeable between the islands, that Caribbeans can understand each other's patois. So that was interesting to me, because in Africa the tribes can't really understand each other, that well. So yeah.
I think it was thank you for that time. I think it was Nama X. I think it was on one of the forecast radio shows. I think it was Namax who was in the chat. He said something very interesting. He was saying how this language thing is the root of this whole thing with our behaviors and whatnot. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. I wish Namax would come up and talk about it. With that said, let's have from Real Black Gentleman.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I like. Okay. So were these who did this study? Like, who did this analysis of this? I didn't catch that part.
Did anyone catch that?
I'm just saying, well, I mean, he's holding the book, so I'm just wondering if it was how would I say it, indigenous, or was it, you know what I'm saying, black people who did the study. I think it's always good to study language. I'm big on it, even though, you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I'm saying, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but seeing this and understanding that, what Jamaican people speak is mostly African, that's a great sign. That's a great sign that Black people hold on to African languages and don't even know it for the most part. A whole bunch of little, ahs and we's and little bits of the little English grammar and little, say I get it. But if you can understand the language, you can understand, like, Black people's should be able to blend languages, Creole and Patois, and just, like, language blending is, it's like, look, if you can, like, make the language do what it do for you. And the thing is, like, I think that anytime you can make a language that, you understand and the another group can't necessarily understand as easily, that's an advantage for you. So, like, big ups to, like, anything, anything that studies language and, like, builds up on it. Like, slang is, like, people talk about, like, the proper, I'm not on that, like, I say, y'all, I do a lot of, I say it how it's said and how it's meant to be understood. Like, you're supposed to break the language down just to, like, build it back up in your own image, as it were. I would think that in terms of, like, international politics, it's like, this is like in the Caribbean, there is, like, the English and French and the Spanish, like, spheres of influence, in that if somehow, some way we could, the people and I mean, people's go through informal ways, so there's always a mixing, but anything that would encourage that would be a plus amongst Black people. You know what I'm saying? Like, anything that would just further that, understanding different people's slang, just understanding these things, so that, just keeping language fresh. The young people always twist it up. And anything that will keep the young people, keeping up with young people, like, all of it, all of it, if you listen to the young people, they will keep you young. They will keep your tongue young. You know what I'm saying? Your tongue young. I'm a yield on that.
Ah, boy, thank you for that, Real Black Gentleman. Let's hear from Buana next. Buana, what's it?
No, I personally think that English language, standard English language we have learned in the Caribbean and in different parts of the African diaspora, is extremely limited, and it doesn't really express some of the sentiments of the African experience. And I think that we have taken the English language, and we have uh, create various interpretations of the meanings of different kinds of words and things of that nature. And we've even created our own uh, little isms, African isms in the language itself. Like the Jamaicans would say, "Bomba clad." Yeah, that's bomba clad is a sentiment that is outside of the English language scope. It's not in the so-called standard English. But if you say that, many people throughout the Caribbean would understand that expression, because it's how it's interpreted. Like in the Bahamas, we say "mother sick." Yeah, that's something that's beyond the scope of the standard English language format. And many people who may not necessarily be aware, that sentiment and the interpretation of that sentiment is exclusively people from the Bahamas. And I think that Americans as well, the Black Americans, have taken the English language and created various different meanings in terms of bad. That's bad. The Western mind will say, well, that must be something horrible. And the Black Americans say, well, that's something actually good. Yeah, and they take. If you listen to Brother Bakari and his Africanisms when he speaks, and how he bends the English language and twists the English language, and all the Africanisms that goes into his expressions, I think it's fascinating how the African mind has taken so-called standard English language and created various different interpretations of what these things actually mean to the mind of the African person living in these environments. Not only the English in the English speaking world, but I also know that Erzuli can tell you different things. You know what I mean? Like they say sakafet. They just twist the French language and make their own impressions. They put their own impressions of the meanings of these kinds of things and what these things in fact mean to large masses of people and Africa in the black world. And I think that it's fascinating how we are so ingenious in reinterpreting the meanings and ideas of these things. And what is interesting when you speak to a person like Tanzan, because her first language is her first language is not English. Okay, so when she speaks standard English language. So she's extremely literal because she understands the English language to be extremely literal. So when she hears people like me and Koku and all of these brothers on the panel speak, she understands that okay, when I listen into these cats over here, they have double meanings. What something may be, it might not necessarily be exactly as how I may have learned it in high school or wherever she would have learned English language, because she understands that when you speak into a black person for either from the Caribbean or America, we have double meanings. We have double meanings all throughout standard English language. So when you speak into us, it's almost as if you speak in a completely different language format, completely different. You know what I mean? It's like you have to interpret that as well as if you different than you would interpret standard English format and standard English language. So I think that we have improved the English language because the African mind has found, and it is, to be honest with you, it is the English language is extremely limited, and it doesn't explain all of the expressions of the black mind, in this Western experience. So sometimes we may come up with our own little words. Sometimes we may take the meanings of the English language and put another meaning to it. So I think that it's fascinating that we have done that. But I think that it's interesting when you dialogue with a regular white person or a person who has just learned standardized English and know cultural elements that come in or into play with that. And I think that it's interesting when you dialogue with these people. I have fun with Tan sometimes because she is very literal in how she's understood the English language. Well, and I think that in having conversations with us, she understands how we bend the English language, twist the English language, and add double meanings to it. So it's just fun when we hear and have these kinds of dialogues, man, because I believe that the English language is extremely limited. But I think that it's fascinating how we put our twist and interpretation to it. I'll stop there.
Bonner, before you go, I'd like to ask you, because this kind of came up in the chat. The patois that's spoken throughout the diaspora, is it an African language or African derived language at this point, or is it just an Africanized English or French or whatever?
I would say it depends on what country you're talking about, because when you speak into, and Erzuli could correct me on this, But when you speak into a French, when you speak into a Haitian have a completely different term for, let's say, like tire. I think the tire in Creole is kiwochwa, something like that. And French, tire is something completely distinctively different. I can't remember what the name is for tire in French. But I think that some of the terms translate, some of the terms are spoken differently, some of the terms are completely different. So you could say it's from an African language. Some of the terms, some African languages, some African terms we may have kept. Some, and I can't do it right now off the top of my head because like I'm drinking right now. But I think that we have learned the English language, but because we have an African mind, that element, that cultural background, I think that we have put within the so-called standard English language our own cultural interpretations of the so-called English language. And sometimes we say it in a way that we understand it. You know what I mean? Like in the Bible, we say weenie and sausage. We say crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think that how we hear it sometimes is sometimes how we speak it. I think that sometimes we take our own cultural perspective and we put it into it and we interpret it a little bit differently. It's just fascinating, man. I'm not a linguist. But I know that how originally it was created. I think that if a regular English person was to come to Nassau, which they have, and to hear how we have interpreted the English language and how we have used the English language, they'll be scratching their heads. And the same thing is done in Jamaica, and the same thing is done throughout the rest of the Caribbean and the Spanish-speaking Caribbean and the French-speaking Caribbean as well.
Yeah, I've witnessed that perplexness of what we've done with their language. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Only what say you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go against the grain, maybe. Although I'm just gonna bring the common sense. What language is it? It's English. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about? What? It's English. Like, I don't know where,
Straight
whether
up English too.
it's just straight up English. Like, I mean, because
Bombaclad is English.
You said what?
Bombaclad is English.
Yeah,
Bombaclad is English.
yeah, I mean, look, the thing is this, that
Okay.
all words are made up. You know what I mean? Somebody made up these words, all of them. What language you're speaking is going to be like if I tomorrow, like for instance, like, matter of fact, even I shouldn't use that, but like let's say, I don't know, yeah, any word that you can think of that you just say like randomly, like you give your son a name or some shit, right? Like it's in English. We do tend to make codes and make this and make that and then so on and so forth. That doesn't change the language, because everybody does it. We have, I mean, at this point in time, in this modern age, people are trying to standardize languages. Okay, so you're gonna have England trying to standardize its language. You're gonna have America trying to standardize its language. But people like white boys in the South sound different. And black people in the South sound different, people from Ireland, people, the people Cockney, that's like a bunch of people saying weird things, that's the bee's knees, and all that type of shit, right? That stuff, the London slang or whatever, or the Ebonics or what have you, all of those different varieties, different dialects, different so on and so forth, whatever you want to call it. It's English. That's the language. Now, you could go say, well, we can call this Jamaican. You can call it Jamaican English, or you could call it Jamaican or whatever. But realistically, if you were to go down with it, it would just be English. That's it. Sure, you have dialects. Sure, you have Creoles. Sure, you have Patois. But if you're saying what language is it, and this is something we learned when we were kids, they're speaking English. Now, if you want a real different language, you go to Swahili. You know, go to Swahili, go to Mandarin. Then you're gonna get a really, you know, you're not gonna be all bummerclotted. Is it bummerclotted? Then you're gonna be like, maybe need to, you know, like maybe need Kuba, you know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna just completely different, completely out of it. You know, the Jamaicans, they just, you know, a wagwan, you know, and it's what's going on. You know, that's not a different language, just a nice way to say it. You know, whereas, you know, if you're in Tanzania, you're like Habari. You know, that's a different language. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Even the British say wagwan.
Yeah, because you know why the British say wagwan? Because of the Jamaicans who went to England. By the way, that's a whole other matter.
Yeah,
but let me
Jamaicans
just
who went to England speaking
English.
England went to Jamaica and speaking and told us they're speaking their language.
So let me ask you, Koku, what is juju?
A fruit in the Bahamas.
Okay, so the Africans on the continent understand juju as a spiritual thing, right? That's what they call juju. We call juju a fruit in the Bahamas. You know what I mean? Juju is not in the English language lexicon. It's not. Where did they get that from? Since we all speak in English language.
Well, let me say
Where
this.
did they get that from?
Let me say that English borrows a lot of words from other people, and so does Tanzania. That doesn't change the language, and so does Swahili. That doesn't change the language. You know, so English, like all the words that you have, like that end in ION, you know, like valorization or blah blah blah, right? All of that is considered Roman words. You know what I mean? Or even if you say atom, like the atom, that's like a Greek concept. You know, just because you borrow words from another culture or another country, or hamburger and you know, bratwurst and all that kind of stuff, just because you borrow words from another country doesn't mean that it's not English. It stays English.
Koku, not Koku. Only I'm not saying that we're not speaking English. I'm saying how it's interpreted. Yes, we speak in English language words, but if there is a meaning behind the words that a regular European person would take, would be a distinctively different meaning in how we would say something. Completely different. Like, and I made an example. In a regular English speaking lexicon, bad means something that is actually something that is negative. In the black world, bad, in the black Western world, of course, bad may not necessarily only mean something that is negative. The meaning and interpretations get translated differently. Where does that come from? There's a double meaning that we have that they do not.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that that's common. Like you could find that throughout, not just, you know, European literature or English literature. You can also find it among like the Cockney people, like the whole bee's knees thing or the cat's pajamas. That doesn't mean anything to anybody outside of Southern London.
Cockney people don't talk like that. Cockney people, they do something a little bit different. Something different.
The whole like, oh man, that's the cat's pajamas. Like that's just slang, and everybody has that, and it's a thing. Like the Nigerians, they have the pidgin where it's English, but it's riddled with Nigerian words. Sure,
I get what you. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No, you was cutting me off. You might as well. I mean, you got what I'm saying anyway.
No, I'm sorry. But what I'm saying is, because I've listened to Cockney. What I'm saying is, the Africans in the West took the English language, and there is standardized forms and interpretation of the language that not only we hear and understand, but there's a double meaning that we have added to the English language. And even in how we express it, by the way, that's a whole other matter. But how we have interpreted it is a little bit different. And yes, there are other cultures that have done it, but I'm saying that how we have done it is unique in the way that we do it.
I don't know, but I know that, you know, I know that we only have 3 minutes, and only Erzuli could do anything in 3 minutes. So.
I'll be quick, I promise.
Let's have from Kaz.
That's not like something Erzuli was saying.
I'll be quick, I promise. All right. So Interesting topic. To me, it makes me just realize how the resilience of African culture, African people, because many of this Creole, this Patois, even Gullah, these languages, these Creole, these mixtures of language were created in the midst of oppression. So I think that these Africanisms that we find within the English language, within these regional dialects, just kind of shows how much African people wanted to cling to their culture, cling to their home. Um, and I think it's just a testament to our resilience because there's entire races of people who are wiped from the face of the earth who couldn't withstand what our ancestors withstood because of how we were able to adapt and adjust to oppression to survive. Um, if is this an African language? I don't know. I mean, would many people would they consider something like Santeria? Would that be an African religion? Because it was, they had to adapt and adjust within a condition of their own religion being stifled. So they had to make adaptations to be able to practice their religion. So I kind of think that the same thing about Patois or Creole or any of these other parts of English or French or Spanish that have certain African language syntax in them. It's just an adaptation. And, to Oni's point, how English itself is an amalgamation of England was invaded by the Vikings, it was invaded by the French, you had the Angles, the Saxons, the Celts, and all these different people in this area that mingled, and then they created the language what we know as English. So even English itself is a bastardized language, a mix of so many different historical groups and languages and things like that. And I think that just the patois is just an extension of that. But yeah, to me, it just shows how African people, even in the midst of the worst conditions known to humanity, we still find a way to survive and continue our history. So I'll leave it at that. I told you I was going to be quick. I made it before 2 o'clock.
I appreciate that, Carl. Does anyone have any last quick words? It's 2 a.m. If not, that's the end of the show tonight. I want to thank, and that was only 6 topics. I want to thank everyone who came through tonight on the panel. Carl Hezekiah, Bakari, Real Black Gentleman, RBG, Guapo, Tanzan, Oni, Buana, Razuli, everyone who's in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. It was a great show. We'll be back next week. And you might see me during the week. Who knows? In fact, I have that series during the week now, too. So you will see me doing some shorts during the week. All right, check out all the shows. Until next week, you guys be good. And you know what? Let me ask for shout outs. I'm sorry. Oni, you want to shout anything out this week?
Yeah, so I was like, wait, why are you not doing no shout outs? I stayed all this time. No, I'm joking. Oh yeah, I'm gonna talk about Huey Newton tomorrow, so you already know. We going in on the black socialists. I'm sorry. That's about it. I don't know what does shout out mean though. Like I gotta see. That's what I'm saying. Like you talking about using English. We don't know what shout out means, but I guess you mean I gotta shout out some folks. So shout out to the people in the back. I see y'all, and that's it.
Thank you for that, Oni. Tanzan, you want to shout anything out this week?
Tuesdays, I think we'll be back this week, time permitting and all that. And Friday with Jose for the Black Pentagrammers. So, and yes, I always shout the breeze. Saturdays, it's been an excellent show. And thank you.
Have a good day. Did you guys have a show on Friday?
No, not this Friday. This Friday we were off on both. Yeah, but hopefully the coming week. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Real Black Gentleman, you want to shout anything out?
Just going to shout out for a great show. I wish we could have had more topics, but you know what I'm saying. This was a nice little show. That's all.
I appreciate your participation. Nama X in the chat says, "Great show and education. Let's create these enlightening works that will shape our culture going forward. I agree with that 100%. Buana, you want to shout anything out this week?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna shout out that guy who repaired my roof for $200 instead of $800. I mean, y'all made me try to feel guilty about $200. $200, man, but that's a $600 difference. But if y'all call it exploitation, I'll have to eat that. So shout out to the panelists and shout out to everyone who gave their contributions tonight, man. But I'm out.
I just want to say that guy sounds like a monster. Like, who does that?
Shout out to Trigger Happy 262. Shout out to Buana. Shout out to Daily Affirmations by Pauline for the topics tonight. I'll see you guys during the week, and we'll meet back here next week for Shoot the Breeze. I think Harsh Hardy Podcast might be on tomorrow night as well. And also shout out to the matron as well. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.